Hi, welcome back to Talking About Success. I'm your host, Jack Canfield. My next guest with me tonight is Renae Baker, the author of Defeating Scrooge, How to Harness the Power of Christmas Carols to Revive Your Spirit Any Time of the Year. She's also the founder and director of I Smile in New York Productions. For over 20 years, Renae and her troupe of Broadway-trained holiday carolers have been uniting people in the New York City area through holiday spirit. Welcome.
Thank you, Jack. Nice to be here.
So you seem to love Christmas so much, and you've written a book about Christmas carols. How did all that start for you?
Well, you know, ever since I was a little girl, I noticed that there was more joy, more smiles, just more happiness around Christmas time, no matter what had happened during the year. You know, I used to wake up in the middle of the night when I was little, and my family was asleep, and I'd tiptoe down the hallway in my flannel PJs, and I'd go turn on the tree lights when it was December, and I'd just sit on the floor and I'd look up at them, and it was just such a beautiful sight. And I'd look out at the snow. I grew up in Michigan, and it looked blue with the moon shining on it and the lights reflected in the window, and I would just sit there and think about, you know, everything that Christmas meant to me and how much more love I felt, and that just kind of stayed with me. And not only that, but I've noticed that many people feel that there's more love even today during the Christmas season, even if they don't celebrate Christmas.
It's true. It's true. I really get that. So do you have an interesting name for your company? Tell us about the name and how that came to be.
Okay.
A little bit about your company as well.
Sure. I Smile in New York Productions. Well, ever since I was little, I've been a close harmony singer. I was that middle school kid who was putting together the a cappella quartet. And I decided that I really wanted to use my voice, and so I went to University of Michigan, got a degree in musical theater, and began to dream about using my voice in New York City. So I finally made that dream come true. I went to New York City, and I was really dismayed at what I call frown pollution everywhere. It's just, here we were in the greatest city in the world, and everyone's going around frowning. So then I began to dream about creating a company of vocal groups that brought joy to the city, not just through music, but also through random acts of kindness, which I called SMILE. See, SMILE is an acronym. It stands for Shine My Inner Light Everywhere. And that's what we do. We're never more successful at it than when we're out caroling.
That's beautiful.
Thanks.
I love it. Yeah, it's too unfortunate. You get to New York, people don't smile that much, and it is a great city. So now you've started something called the Smile Movement. Talk about that.
Well, that's tied into the random acts of kindness. So there's about 30 of us carolers. We are primarily a Christmas caroling company, and we started out as 4, and now we're 30 every year, going out in quartets and trios. And we love to sometimes go out and we'll do a flash mob like in Grand Central Station or somewhere.
Really?
Yes, we do. Yeah, you know, especially at times when we feel like maybe the spirit of the country is sagging, and maybe a little boost in, you know, patriotism would be welcome. But we also like to go out in the middle of winter. Well, you know, all my carolers, they each have a caroling book that I make for them each year, and there's a pocket in the front, and there's a starter kit for getting them started just doing random acts of kindness. So there's hand and foot warmers, because we're in New York City, you know, it gets cold in the winter, and some Kleenex, and like a $2 Dunkin' Donut card that's with a little note that says, you've been given a New York smile, and they can keep it themselves, or they can, you know, go buy a hot cocoa for a cold construction worker, or just, you know, spending that extra time with befuddled tourist on the street corner.
I'm curious, have any of your flash mobs in Grand Central Station been recorded and put on YouTube?
Well, there is one. You know, we got some footage of it. It's not very good footage because it was kind of far away. It was up on a staircase, and it was filmed with a phone. We started to sing our special version of, it starts out Auld Lang Syne and it goes into God Bless America.
Oh, cool.
So we had one of our carolers, actually it's the caroler who is the very first voice that you hear on the Christmas CD. The first track is Carol of the Bells. Anyway, so she starts, and then I joined her, and then people just started joining as if they were just coming off of trains and decided to join along, and it was really neat. And then the police came along and said, you're not supposed to be here. But they were really nice because they liked what we were doing, so they waited till we got through the song, and then they did it. So, you know.
Isn't it funny how we get in the way of the things that are really kind of bringing us together and supporting the joy in the world?
It's true, but
so amazing.
There's pictures on my website of the nice police officer. He was a good sport. Yeah,
that's good. It wasn't Officer Krupke from the.
It was West Side Story.
So you've written this wonderful book, Defeating Scrooge. Tell us how you got into that. Why'd you write a book?
Well, okay. Well, my Christmas caroling company, we just celebrated our 20th anniversary last November, and so we've been doing this a long time. And my carolers, they think that I have more Christmas spirit than anyone. But I have to tell you, about 6 years ago, I had a crisis of spirit. It was just MIA in the middle of the season. I mean, it just never popped up the entire season long, which was a personal tragedy for me. It was really painful. And so I had to do something I never wanted to do and never want to do again, which was rely on my theatrical training and just fake my way through the season, because there wasn't time to do any introspection during the season. I was just busy bringing joy to everybody else. And so as I was taking down my tree in January, I just thought, what happened? And how can I never let that happen again? And so I traced my steps back 11 months prior to that season, and I realized I'd had an event that really shook me to the core and broke some of my fundamental building blocks of my faith, which I later would realize were tied into my Christmas spirit. But I just said, I've got to do something proactive right now, January, to make sure that it's in place for me, my spirit, when I need it, which obviously is in December. So I was sweeping up the needles to my dead tree after I'd taken it out to the curb, and literally right under my nose was a box that housed a top hat of one of my carolers, and on top of that was his caroling book. And so I picked it up and I thought, I wonder, could the answer be in here? So I was flipping through the book, and of course I had most of them memorized, but I thought there's going to be more to learn about these carols than I know. And so I set a goal for myself right then and there that I was going to concentrate on a different carol each week of the year and learn things, look at them in different ways than I ever had. And I tell you, I knew the very first week it was working. I was getting really excited about the discoveries I knew I had to make. And I realized as I got through the year that the reason it was working was because we all have something that I call holiday spirit triggers. And they can become damaged through some kind of traumatic event, but that we can reset them. And this was one of the ways. And I thought, well, I've got to share this. So I started to write a book about, I'd been keeping a journal, and some really neat histories had shown up. And I was also writing essays of the ways I was applying it in my own life. And so I started to write the book, and I started to write the process to make it easier for other people to do as well.
You shared a story with me before we came on camera. I wonder if you'd be willing to share it. It was about the caroling and the effect it had in 2 wars. Would you share that with our viewers?
Oh, yes. Well, Christmas has a very strong spirit, and Christmas carols are very strong, and they can actually stop wars in their tracks. There's a couple of stories I like to talk about. The first one was 1870, Christmas Eve, during the Franco-Prussian War, the fighting between the French and the Germans. So it's Christmas Eve, and a French soldier jumps out of his trench, throws down his weapons, and he starts singing Cantique de Noël, which is O Holy Night in its original French. And he gets through all 3 verses. And then a German soldier jumps out of his trench and in response sings From Heaven Above to Earth I Come. And the fighting stopped for 24 hours. And they observed Christmas together in peace. And then another war, another Christmas Eve, 1914, this was World War I. So in one trench you've got the Germans, and in the other trench you've got the British Allied forces. And instead of lobbing fire at each other, around 8:30 p.m. on Christmas Eve, the Germans started singing a Christmas carol. It's disputed which one it was that they started with, but so they started singing in their native German, and the British were wondering, is this a trick? But then, after that, they sang one in French to them. So they're volleying Christmas carols at each other, and then in their own native language. And then when the Germans started to sing Adeste Fidelis, which is O Come All Ye Faithful in Latin, the British started singing with them. So you had enemies at war, down in their trenches, singing the same carol in the same language. And that event right there brought them out of their trenches and into the middle of what they called no man's land. So they climbed over the barbed wire and they met and they looked at each other in each other's eyes and they talked to each other and they got to know each other as fellow human beings with wives and children waiting for them at home and mothers, and they vowed not to shoot during Christmas. And they played a game of what they called football, what we call soccer. They found old bikes in the wreckage that didn't have tires on them, and they were having races on these old rickety bikes. And they found all these clothes and hats and tried to make each other laugh and costumes. And they celebrated for 48 hours. And then, of course, the commanders were not happy about them fraternizing with the enemy. And it was actually the commanders who shot the first shots that resumed the war 48 hours later. But there was a British soldier who said many years later when he was being interviewed on television, or not, I guess it was a newspaper, but he said that if it had been left up to them, he believes 100% there would not have been another shot fired.
Right.
Yeah.
Makes total sense. Now, what do you want people to take away from your book about the Christmas spirit?
Oh, well, that it's really strong, that it has such power as to stop wars, and that if we're more mindful of what Christmas means to us, and if we're more mindful about what our spirit means to us and what voices we're actually listening to, that I believe that we have a golden opportunity every holiday season, no matter whether you celebrate Christmas or Hanukkah or Kwanzaa or any of the other celebrations, we have this golden opportunity to come together in more peace and more joy. And if we can just do that and take that into the next year with us, I believe it'll bring more peace in communities and more probability for world peace.
Beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful. Well, first of all, I want people to get your book because it's a fascinating book. But if people want to find out about your speaking, you have workshops, your carolers go out and do events of Christmas, and I know you have other products and things you just mentioned, etc. How do they find out? Where do they go? You go to www.ismileny.com. And you'll be able to reach me through there. You'll be able to book the carolers. You'll be able to pre-order the CDs or the book. And just reach out to me and say hi. Great. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you joining me. Make sure you go to her website. We've got books, CDs, her workshops. Especially make sure you get a copy of the book. I love it. Thank you. Defeating Scrooge. We all have a Scrooge inside of us that we have to defeat, as well as the Scrooges out there in the world that we meet. So thank you very much. It's true. It's true. Right. Thank you so much, Jack. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas to you, too. And happy holidays. Good. All right, stay tuned. We'll be right back after this message.